you're on a bit of an exciting journey, looking at all kinds of different security mechanisms, how to implement them, common things that go wrong, and you'll be seeing different ways of being able to attack systems, break into systems, and also different ways of being able to protect systems and prevent them from being attacked. So, one of the things I want to say is that if you find that I'm speaking a bit too fast, or anything you don't understand, do feel free to tell me. I know sometimes I do speak a little bit quickly, so do let me know if I'm talking a little bit too fast. Also, feel free to grab me after the lectures if you want to go over anything, and do feel free to email me at any time with any questions that you've got. It will make up your questions. You've got a lot of technology. So my email address is up there. I am osb@ecs.scotland.ac.uk. Now, another thing I'll just say is I like to try to keep these lectures quite interactive and make them a bit more fun. So sometimes I will encourage you to just shout out, so do feel free to do so. The other thing as well is if you've got any questions, do feel free to stick up your hand and I'll do my best to try and answer them. So to begin, as I said, I like to have a little bit of fun. If any of you have ever seen Have I Got News for You, we're going to do a bit of sickness through in the news this week. Now, see if you can fill in the blanks in any of these headlines. So first of all, Yahoo confirms data breach of at least how many accounts? Have any of you been following this story? Feel free to just shout out the number.
500 million.
500 million is the correct answer. 500 million accounts Yahoo has lost the data for. What about this one? Safe browsing checks failed 16,000 blank site hacks this year. Now, I'll give you a clue. The blank here is referring to a particular bit of popular web application software. WordPress is the correct answer. And WordPress just so happens to be our wrong answer of the game. Brought to you by WordPress. You'll see this will be coming up quite a lot in these lectures, and I've got a bit of a recurring theme here. Just say no to WordPress. The core code of WordPress is filled with security vulnerabilities that are coming out every single week. And then on top of that, there's hundreds of thousands of plugins, all filled with the worst security vulnerabilities that you can possibly imagine. And the first things that people do when they set up a WordPress site is they go online, install a bunch of plugins, install a bunch of themes, and they've made it from going about 10% insecure to about 100% insecure. At which point it only becomes a matter of time as to how long it will take until the site gets hacked. If any of you don't believe me on this, and you want to take up this challenge, set up a WordPress site on a public website somewhere, install WordPress, go to the top most featured plugins that are recommended and install 10 of them, install 3 of the top most popular themes, and then don't touch it. Come back in a year's time, and I can guarantee you that website will have been hacked, your WordPress will have been compromised, and if you're unlucky, your database will have been hacked, and your machine is probably now part of a botnet. I encourage all of you to take up that challenge if you don't believe me. Because that is what is happening all over the internet, everywhere at the moment. The amount of compromised WordPress sites that you see are everywhere. And this is only including numbers that we actually know about. There are people out there who have built tools that will go across all public domain names that are listed and try to access WordPress sites on them. They then build massive directories of WordPress sites, and they go and check them every day, and as soon as an exploit comes out, they just run down the whole list and try to exploit them all. And all you have to do is your site should have been accessed at some point and not to be completely up to date. And WordPress's auto-updating thing tends to break randomly, usually just before a critical update comes out. Again, speaking from experience here. And the site will get compromised. So just say no to WordPress. We'll be seeing a lot of this later. One last one. Hacked Steam accounts are spreading what? Any suggestions? Any thoughts? So if you were to hack a Steam account and then you've got the ability to be able to send messages to people, be able to send stuff to people, what might you send to them as a malicious person? The correct answer is malware. So this is the recent news that a large amount of Steam accounts have been compromised, and they've set up bots that are going through and sending out malware to all of their friends, saying things like, "Oh, come and download this latest mod for this game. Oh, we've got a new patch for this game that will make it even better. Oh, get this, this will help you cheat and become really good at whatever that latest person shooting game is that everybody's playing these days are. I'm a little bit behind on this. The last first-person shooting game that I played was Doom, so you might have to fill that blank in yourself. But this is another big thing that is happening at the moment. But these are just from the last week. These kind of things are coming up all the time, and this is some of the stuff that we'll be taking a look at this module. So first of all, onto an introduction. We're going to have two different introductions, but first of all, an introduction to cybersecurity. So what is it all about? It's about electronic data, it's about abuse and misuse of that data. And the key thing to remember is that security is still an IT system. It's got technology, it's got procedures, and it's got people. And if any of you have ever used technology, if any of you have ever followed procedures, and if any of you have ever met people, you know that all three of these things are absolutely useless most of the time. Technology will always let you down, particularly when you need it. Procedures just become, might have had good intentions at the beginning, but usually become a little bit pointless after a while. And people are the weakest link in the chain so often. All you need is to give someone a couple of glasses of wine and you've got the ECS master password. Definitely not saying that that happens. I'll leave that up to your imagination, but this is how easy it is to compromise these systems. The interesting one about procedures as well, the university used to have a procedure where every single time there was any kind of document that was handed in to the reception, it would get photocopied 3 times onto pink paper and put into a big special cabinet. Then, when that cabinet got full, they ended up buying more cabinets, and every time they kept on photocopying all these pieces of paper on ink and putting them in this cabinet. And they did this for a couple of years. Then they got a new staff member in, and they said, well, why do you do this? And they said, it's the procedure. And they said, why is it the procedure? And they're like, that's actually a good question. So they started going back and trying to work out why they actually did this, because they never took anything out of these cabinets, and they never used them, and they definitely didn't know why it was on pink paper. And the reason it eventually turned out was that the area that they were previously storing things for a bit was temporarily flooding, so they said, oh, in case that room floods, we'll put some copies in that cabinet. It was supposed to be something that would last for 2 weeks, and 3 years later they were still doing it and didn't even know why they were doing it. These are why procedures are quite ridiculous. And I probably don't even need to say anything about technologies, because you've all used technology, you know what it's like. As I said, all of them are usually useless and can't be relied upon. As we can see, who can you actually trust out there? There's a really lovely thing on Information is Beautiful that I love, which shows you all of the world's biggest data breaches and hacks out there, and the bubbles are based on the size of compromise from that particular company. You can see there's things like Yahoo there, you've got eBay there. The problem is, this is the most recent one, but it goes on. Sorry for it being pixelated, I shall show you a nicer version of it shortly. And it goes on. In fact, if I take you to the proper site where you can see it in all of its glory, you can see just how ridiculous this is. Let's see if it will nicely switch over. You can see just how ridiculous this is. Let's go down. They're so squashed in that most of them you can't even read the names of. That's how many compromises we've had. And this is just the latest one. This is just stuff that's happened in the last month. Then we get to 2016, we get to 2015, we get to 2014. Something quite exciting happens actually as we go down. They do get a bit bigger in the past, but also, have you noticed, there's less of them. So these are getting worse. As time goes on, we are leaking more and more data, we're getting more and more breaches, and the company names are generally getting bigger as well. Here, AOL and Leapfrog were losing less than 100,000, and then up here, the bubbles have even had to resize. You can barely even see the size of these bubbles due to the amount of stuff that is getting lost here. And it's a really cool thing to take a look at, because you can probably find out at least you have probably used at least one of these services. I'm probably willing to bet that you've actually used about 10 of them. And your data is now out there, and this is contributing to the reasons why you get spam, people are sending stuff to your emails, and probably some of your passwords and stuff that are out there. There are websites out there that will let you put in a password, and you can find out how many times that password has been leaked by people that you thought you could trust with it. This is one of the #1 reasons why they say use a different password on every website, because most of them will end up giving it away unintentionally. But it's quite interesting to just take a look at the severity of this problem and having to ask the question, who can you actually trust these days? These are big names. These are big companies. These are people that you would expect to be able to trust. You would hope that people like the IRS, you would hope that people like MySpace, you would hope that people like Dropbox, eBay, AOL, Evernote, these people, a lot of them, who market themselves on having secure services. Evernote advertises itself as being able to store secure, sensitive data and notes that you need without anybody having access to it, and then they leak all of the personal information and passwords that can give access to it. These are the kind of things that we need to be aware of. Now, can we work the magic to get it to go back into the right screen? Well, things we can. So the key message from this is that we are getting worse. And that's why we now have modules like this. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we didn't need to have cybersecurity modules. 10 years ago, and before that, it was generally only a small pot of competent developers that were developing stuff, and they generally knew what they were doing. Part of the problem is now anyone can code, and it's a really easy thing to get into, and as a result, we've got about 700,000 content management systems written in PHP by 15-year-olds that somehow end up being used by massive companies. We're not entirely sure how this happened, only that it has, and that we now need to deal with it. So now on to us. Sorry, not that. So we've got Ed Maluska, who is the module leader, Gary, and my these are our email addresses if you need to contact us. Do feel free to get in contact if there are any questions, if you've got any suggestions, if there's anything you're not understanding, or anything you want to go over in more detail. That's what we're here for. To me, I was a student here at Southampton University, for all the crimes that came with that. I'm now a teaching fellow here, teaching cybersecurity. That started accidentally and has ended up becoming a long-term thing. Before that, I worked at Netcraft, which is a really good Bath-based company, and I did security consulting there. We used to work with major people, everyone from HSBC to Microsoft, big names, big security holes. I also worked at the Students' Union, big security holes, and I also worked at iSolutions. I don't even need to make a comment there. The key message from all of this is there was much sadness. At least when I was at Netcraft, I was being paid to sort out the sadness. At the other two jobs, I just had to sit there and watch it happen. Because there was not enough money to sort out security issues, and nobody would try and hack us, they said, until the box office got compromised and all of the account details of the people buying stuff got leaked. But again, still have to say about that better. And don't tell anybody, because I'll probably get into trouble for that. But there has been much sadness. These applications still used by thousands of people daily in one of those places that I mentioned. They're used today, and it has this line in it. Now, to any people here who know PHP, what is the problem with this code? This is the exact code that came from it. This was the first 4 lines in this file. Can any of you tell me what is wrong with this code? It's not SQL. It's the most obvious, basic form of SQL injection you could even imagine. This is the kind of example that someone like me would put into a slide and say, this is a simple example. You would never see this in common use because people are better than this. This is like a really obvious way to demonstrate the problem, and you think, nobody would ever code this badly. And then you open up an enterprise piece of software that X is using, and you see this line at the very top of the login.php page. That can probably help you narrow down what application this is. And you cry. You just cry a little bit inside. So this is why I teach cybersecurity. I have a hope for a better future, and you are it, because I'm hoping that all of you will go out, and it will mean that when we come in 10 years' time, and I show the same presentation, and I go to that same website, all of those blobs are going to be far smaller, and we'll be able to say, 2016 was the turning point. This was the year when it went from all the companies having loads of stuff, and then gradually they started getting smaller and smaller, to the point we live today, where security is barely an issue, and we only have to worry about major infrastructure attacks and cybersecurity attacks in other countries, not actual web applications that are being compromised and everybody's data being stolen. I no longer want these to be the weekly headlines, blank loses a gazillion passwords, millions of accounts compromised in breach at blank, Blind shuts down following loss of all customer data. And you are going to be the people that change all of that. So this is what we have Comp 6230 for. And we've got a lot of excitement in store in this module. Hopefully you're feeling excited already. Hopefully you think that this is exciting. If it's not, let me know and I'll go and find something else to do. Maybe I can try comedy. We're going to be looking at the principles of security. We're going to be looking at different types of security threats. We're going to be looking at how we can plan, analyse and gauge the risk of these kinds of attacks. We'll be looking at different kinds of security models. We'll be looking at computer forensics. And we'll be looking at malware. That's one of my personal favourites. That's always very exciting. We'll also be... Oh, just got to wait for it to finish loading. Web application security. Maybe I shouldn't go into comedy, I think that's terrible. Penetration testing. Different tools and techniques. We'll be showing you some of the industry standard tools that are used here and giving you a chance to actually play with them and get to use them. Network security, cryptography, and different types of secure systems. So hopefully, most of those things that you're looking at, you're thinking, that actually sounds quite interesting. I'm rather glad that I picked this module, or I was forced to do this module, but I suppose I can survive. Hopefully we'll have something a bit positive there. Our lectures. So the lectures are here to introduce you to the material. So we've got this one at Tuesday, we've got another one on Wednesday, and we are to introduce you to the material, to signpost you around. So I'll introduce concepts and show you the kind of things that you need to know, but it is also expected that you will go away and do some further reading and actually have a chance to put some of the things into practice and take things a little bit further in your own time as well. We also have a tutorial slot. This is on Thursday at 12. This will be a chance to answer questions and go over things in depth. And we'll mainly be using this tutorial slot while the coursework assignments are running, because it will run it as a kind of chance for you to come along to the Q&A and say, oh, I'm not sure about this. Could you explain this in a bit more detail? Could you go through this in a bit more depth? And that's what those tutorial slots are for. We won't be using the tutorial slot every week. So unless you hear otherwise, presume that it's not in use unless we tell you, there's a tutorial this week, come along to the tutorial. And you'll be sent around messages, and it will also be on the course homepage if we're using the tutorial slot. We also have the lab slot, where we turn the theory into practice. This is where it sounds slightly magical, that's okay. Again, we won't be using the lab every week. These will mostly be running throughout the time that the coursework is set. And these run on Wednesday, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and will be held on level 2 of the building, the Zephyr building, building 59 on campus, where there's big teaching laboratories there, and you will find us there. Again, you'll be sent more details about this. We are not having a lab session in this first week. Our first lab session will be next week, where we're going to give you something to have a bit of a go at hacking and breaking. So there will be no lab and no tutorial this week, but there will be next week. Everything you need about this module will be found on the module homepage, which hopefully a lot of you have seen already. This is on the bot/module/comp6230. On here you can find the notes pages, which will be updated. Every time we have a lecture, we'll then put the notes and things up onto that page. You can also take a look at through some of the past resources and past things from the past year. Sometimes that might be helpful. You'll also find additional reading material and resources on this page as well. And just a reminder that there is an 11 hours of study per week on average that's expected that you'll be doing, and that's in addition to the lectures and labs. The lectures are just the beginning. It's expected that you are putting some of your own time into this as well. And so I'd encourage you, do read the additional resources and materials, practice the tools and techniques that we'll be introducing you to, and complete the assignments, and do try to start them before the deadline. For those of you who have seen BDCS Internet, it's got a nice coursework box, and it will show you the upcoming deadline. And once they get set, they'll appear in white. When there's a week to go, they go yellow. When they're due in tomorrow, they go red. When they go red, that doesn't mean start the coursework now. So we have 2 coursework assignments to help you put your theory into practice. We've got one on web-based penetration testing, which will be an individual piece of coursework. And this is where we're taking a set of real vulnerabilities that are being found on an actual bank and giving you a version of that bank to actually attack. and see if you can find those vulnerabilities and see if you can steal the most amount of money. We'll also be doing a group-based, network-based penetration exercise where you'll be given a virtual network to play with and see just how much damage could you do if this was a real network exposed to the internet. And then we'll point out to you that actually this was. And then in addition to this, we also have a 2-hour exam which makes up the remainder of the assessment. So the coursework, we've got coursework number 1 and coursework number 2. Now in your head, this is all that I can presume is what people see when I put these up here. Set week 8, due week 8. Set week 11, due week 11. Because these are web-based coursework, and I can see when people start their coursework. And a large amount of people seem to begin the coursework the day before it is due in, or the night before it is due in, or the really keen people, the hour before it's due in. If you'd like some statistical information, I can give it to you. The people that started at those points failed those coursework. So don't be like them. Because the dates aren't actually that mean, they're actually quite sensible. Coursework number 1 is set in week 5 and is due in week 8. And coursework number 2 is set in week 8 and due in 11. You've got plenty of time to get that coursework. And if you want to be the people that get the highest marks and the highest scores, start them here. Because there is almost a direct correlation to when people start the coursework and how well they do. If in your head you want to swap this round so that it looks like that says due week 8 and that one says due week 5, then maybe do that. Maybe that will then help you achieve this far better. This is passing on a little bit of past wisdom from the previous year. And I hope if I say this every year, people might get slightly better. We shall see. The other thing, though, I'd like to encourage you to do is to look out for each other. The way that we work here is that everyone can get 100%. You are not marked against each other. We're not marking to a band. We're not doing a bell curve or anything like that. You are marked purely based on what you achieve. And if you meet all of the goals and all the objectives, you can get 100%, and you are marked individually. Which means that there's no disadvantage to you helping each other and supporting each other. And we want to encourage you to do that. And in fact, we found that the best results come when you do help each other. Because if you all work together, share things, share knowledge, share useful resources that you found, and you all talk to each other, that's when the best results come. But, that said, do remember that your work must be your own. There's a difference between helping someone and saying, ooh, I found this really interesting page, it's got some really useful stuff on, or going to your friend who doesn't understand SQL injection and going through and explaining to them. That is different to just sitting there and doing the coursework for them. And if you end up falling into that trap, you get into plagiarism, and it's a whole world of sadness. We do, unfortunately, have to have tools and things that will detect plagiarism, and just doing things like changing the comments slightly, renaming the variables a little bit, or moving around the sentence structure isn't enough to fool it. So do try to not fall into that plagiarism trap, because that just ends up sad for everybody. Do help each other, share, talk, but make sure that the coursework that you submit is your own individual work. That's really important to say, because if you get called into plagiarism meetings and things like that, it's a very, very bad place to be. And it's easy to avoid. Help each other, but produce your own work, and actually be assessed on what you have achieved. So, we've got some communication and support stuff to help you. The first thing is, for those of you that use Facebook, one of the things we found in this module that is really helpful, particularly given the fact that a lot of the concepts that we deal with are actually quite tricky, we've set up a Facebook group for you. If you go to facebook.com/group/comp6230, you can request to join that group, or otherwise just go to the search box and type in comp6230, and I can then add you to that group. And that will be an extra community where you can post messages, help each other, ask any questions. If you put stuff up there, I will try to help you as well, but quite often other people from the class will help out too. And we found that been very, very beneficial in previous years, so I would encourage you to make use of that. If you don't use Facebook, there is an alternative. We have a course mailing list, which is comp6230@all.soften.ac.uk. And again, you can post a question on that. That does go around to the whole class, but it's a good way to get discussions and things going, particularly if you don't use Facebook. If you want to email us individually, so for example, if it's something very specific to your assignment and you don't want to give the answer away to the whole class, and you can't ask it in a vague way, then do feel free to email us individually. And similarly, if you've got any questions or comments specific to us as lecturers or to the module, then again, feel free to drop us an email. And we'll also set up a frequently asked questions page on the Notes Wiki, which will, so if someone asks a question that's useful to lots of people, we'll put that out as well. We also obviously will have the labs, and we'll have the tutorial sessions. So there's lots of places where you can get support. All the way through the labs, there'll be demonstrators there willing to help you. I'll be buzzing around as well, trying to help out people as much as I can. We'll have the tutorials to run over anything in more depth and detail, so do make sure that you talk to us. And also, do tell us your feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Is the stuff that we're covering interesting? Is it helpful? Is there anything you're not understanding? Is there anything you think that we should be covering that we're not? Is it going too fast? Is there anything that you want to let us know? Then do feel free to give us feedback, because we listen and we want to make this course the best it can be for all of you. And we do listen. These are some of the feedback that we had last year that we've tried to adapt to this year. People said that the practical assignments were fun, but they wanted a bit more support. So this year we've added more labs, we've added some non-assessed mini exercises where you can do some practice, and we've also added more demonstrators to help out. People said that they'd like more lab-based practical work. So this year we've added dedicated lab slots, we've got larger space and a lot more resources and more lab-based work, so that you can do more practical stuff. People said the content was really interesting, but sometimes it feels like there's just too much in too little time. So this year we've taken a look through, we've restructured the content, we've tried to spread things out a little bit better, and we've lowered the pace a bit. So hopefully that should be going a little bit slower and a bit easier to keep up with this year. And also people said they'd like some more case studies. And don't worry, we've added lots. There'll be lots and lots of interesting case studies as we go around. So just to finish off, this is just an introductory lecture, but just to finish off, we'll just have a bit of a think about how does security affect you? I'd like to just pose a question. What would happen if your phone was hacked? And by this I mean you've just been browsing the internet and you suddenly tapped a link to a website that looks a little bit dodgy. You press back and you hope that everything's fine, but what you didn't realise is while you were on that website, it executed code on your phone. This has been happening an awful lot. It's happened before. Taking a look at Android here, these are ordered by severity. There's been a lot of stuff recently, but just over the past, there's been loads of vulnerabilities. This is just 7 out of 12 pages, 553 total vulnerabilities. This is the kind of thing that happens a lot. Now, last time I showed this slide to someone, they said, oh, that's Android. Apple's much better. Apple's secure. It doesn't get hacked. So now I've added in this second slide here. The same thing happens. And these kind of exploits are actually how jailbreaking works. Jailbreaking, which allows you to gain control of the phone and be able to run unauthorized code. It's really nice when someone releases an exploit and you can run it on your phone and then you can run all those apps that Apple don't want you to have. But have you thought about how those exploits work? They work by allowing you to run unauthorized code. And that unauthorized code could be malicious, not just there to help you buy dodgy stuff from other stores. In fact, if I just highlight some of the words on here, you can see execute arbitrary code, execute arbitrary code, execute arbitrary code. This is all very, very bad. If you haven't already gathered, that's the bright red squares and a score of 10 against these vulnerabilities. The other thing is these are all remote things. These things can happen by just passing by a website and having it run malicious code on your phone. So what would happen if your phone was hacked? Does anyone want to throw out some suggestions? Let's say that there's some code that ran on your phone. What could they do?
Steal information, maybe.
Steal information? What kind of information?
A password.
Password, yeah. All the stuff, any saved passwords and things that are saved in the keychain, saved by the browser.
Calling history and contacts.
Calling history and contacts. They can find out all the people that you've networked with, get out all of their numbers, email addresses, other actual addresses, other interesting information like birthdays. That's enough to start stealing somebody's identity.
Emails.
Emails, yeah, they can get through all of your emails and even keep access to your email account by using the authentication token. So if you're getting new emails in, they can see the stuff that you're getting. What does that open you up to?
Identity theft.
Identity theft. But being able to have access to the emails, what can they then get access to beyond what's on your phone?
Yeah, bank.
all kinds of other services, any services that have a forgot your password thing, where they send you an email and might confirm your date of birth and your address, well, suddenly you've got all three of those pieces of information, and if you've got contacts and things in there, when it says, who was your best friend at school? What's the guess that is in the best friends list on Facebook, linked in with that person's name there? And so here's just an example. Your messages, location, pictures, calendars, saved passwords. Browsing history is incredibly important as well. Knowing what a person has done for about the past year of their life, those histories tend to contain quite an awful lot and gives you an awful lot of information, including things like services they've logged into, things that they bought stuff from, where they probably go to work, private emails that they've read, along with websites that they're currently logged into and have active and open sessions. The location one is particularly interesting. I'm not sure how many of you have actually ever looked at your location history. If you've got an Android phone, it's really easy to do. If you go into Google Maps, it's got a little thing that says your timeline, and you can swipe through day by day, and it will show you every place you went, and give you a timetable as to what time you arrived, what method of transport you used to get there, and what you did when you were there. It can even work out that if you've been to a pub or something like that, it says, have dinner at the Crown in Highfield. Has a little map marker of where you went, and if you took any pictures there, it puts all of that into there as well. Really, really cool because it's a personal diary, but really quite scary when you think that someone has access to all that data and just look through it all. Apple has something very similar, but it's not quite so easy to take a look at. So suddenly, this no longer becomes a question as to what would happen if your phone was hacked. It's now become a question as to what would happen if your line was hacked. Because from your phone, looking outwards, you've got access to all the stuff inside the internet browsers, you've got access to their emails, and access to their social media and networking. Going a step further, what does having access to all these social media and social networking give them access to? So if I had your phone and I had Facebook Messenger, what could I then start doing? I could start contacting your friends, I could start contacting your family, and they wouldn't know it wasn't really you. I could start asking them personal questions, I could start asking them questions that help me steal the identity even further, or get them to do things for me, and they would presume it was coming from you. I could take over your online identity, both with family and with friends. And from emails and having access to the web browser, what are some of the high priority websites that I might like to gain control of or gain access to?
Bank accounts,
Bank accounts, yeah.
social media.
Social media, we've already covered, but yeah. Any kind of online and e-commerce sites, because they are giving access, they're all quite, they can show you things like the last 4 digits of their card, the expiry date of the card, and information like that you can use to steal their account details. But even better than that, most of them even have access to things like Buy It Now, or PayPal has recently introduced this skip login and just allow me to buy things instantly without using the password feature. Which again, you could just exploit and immediately gain access to somebody's account and transfer all of the money from their bank account using PayPal to an alternative person without even needing a password. There's one thing that's really important that is missing from this diagram though. So we've covered the financial aspect, we've covered the social aspect, we've covered things like email and getting access to all of that, we've covered social media. What is one other thing that we would almost instantly have access to that could be quite disastrous depending on the person whose phone it was that was compromised?
Phone calls.
Sensitive information.
Sensitive information, yes, but where is it stored and what kind of sensitive information?
Well, to the work-related information.
Yeah, work-related information is good. How many of you use some kind of cloud storage? How many of you have stuff in Google Drive, or in Dropbox, or in Box, or on OneDrive, or things like that? So much of our life now is storing documents in the cloud, because it's just really simple. Having your Dropbox that just works everywhere and all of your files in it, how much personal data in there? How much stuff is in there that you would really, really not want somebody else to gain access to? How much damage can they do with that? It's one thing for you to be a personal individual, and if they've got that, they might gain some extra passwords, extra access into things, and be able to take over your life. But if your work is working at university, we've got some university lecturers who keep their entire research portfolio, research data and stuff like that in Dropbox for convenience and ease. Losing that kind of stuff is bad, but then you've got to step above that. People that are like CEOs, executives of companies that have really important financial information, financial records, user account details and things like that, all stored in these cloud services. And how many of people have their phones set to auto log in and stay connected with a session, because that way you just tap the icon and all of your files are ready there. After all, it's fine because you've got a passcode on your phone, so it doesn't matter that people can log into that stuff instantly until your phone gets compromised. And that's why this is such a big thing now. So hopefully this has been a bit of an interesting introduction for you. We've covered some of the initial concepts, and we're going into a lot more detail in our following lectures to come. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah?
When get those slides.
These slides will be put up onto the ECS module page that I showed earlier. It'll probably take me a couple of hours or so to upload them, but they should be up by the end of the day. So I'll put them up, upload them, and then if you go to Ollie's lectures on there, there'll be a link through to this set of slides. And I'll do that for every one of my lectures, so the slides will go up just after the lectures happen. So I prefer to put them up, I prefer to put the slides up after the lectures, because as you probably noticed, I can get a bit crazy and a little bit jumpy, and I add quite a lot of stuff. And these slides probably wouldn't make much sense until after the lecture. You probably look at them and just thinking, this lecture is really, really random. What on earth are they putting here? So at least this way, hopefully you go into the lecture slides and remember the craziness that comes. And they're only going to get worse. I'll tell you that now. Any other questions?
Is there any additional reading?
Additional reading each week will be put up onto the module page as well. So generally we'll select some relevant reading for each week and put them up. There's not going to be too much additional reading for the first week, but as we start getting into greater and greater depth, all those additional reading links will be up there as well. There are some general textbooks and things that are quite useful just for the whole module, and those are available on the syllabus page at the very bottom. There's a few recommendations that the module lead has put up there that he thinks are good general ones. But the week-by-week resources will all be put up on the module site as well. And I would encourage you to go away and read them. Also, quite often you'll see that I include links and things like that in my slides. There's not been many today, although you might want to take a look at that Information is Beautiful one with all the hacks ones, because each one of those bubbles, when you click on it, it will tell you how that site was compromised, how they got in, and how disastrous it was. So it makes an interesting reading and gives you some good examples to use within, and gives you some kind of idea to the context of cybersecurity. If you've got any other questions, do feel free to drop me an email. Yep.
Yes, the penetration test, the two penetration tests, can we use all the ways we can to do the test, or just we are limited to?
You will be given some more details when the assignments are actually set, but you will be encouraged to use a range of different methods. The only thing that you won't use is brute forcing, because usually by the time you're having to resort to brute forcing, you're not really doing proper penetration testing at that point, you're just trying to break in. So we don't want to, all of the stuff will have vulnerabilities that you can actually be clever about and actually exploit and work your way in without you needing to try and brute force a 16-character password that you'll probably never be successful at. But we'll give you a bit more details about that when the assignments are set. And we'll also talk about all those different various techniques and various different ways in and how to break in. That will be covered in all the lectures. And we'll give you a chance to play with all of those as well. Yeah, if you've got any more questions, then do feel free to drop me an email. All the details of things are up on the module site. And just as a final thing, have you found this interesting? Has it been a good lecture? It's always nice to get feedback.
Yeah.
How's it going to be? Have you found it a bit too fast, or about the right kind of speed, or a bit too slow? Do feel free to be honest.
Good speed.
Is it about right, or a little bit too fast? That's useful. I shall bear that in mind. Okay. Thank you very much. So, do join the Facebook group.